Our first presenter and keynote presenter this afternoon is the Honourable Dan van Holst Pellekaan, Member of Parliament and the SA Minister for Energy and Mining. I'm sure that you'll welcome him warmly today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Marie, and apologies I was a little bit late getting here for lunch. The last time, if I recall correctly, that we actually had a CEDA lunch like this here in Adelaide was early December 2019. And none of us would have known what was going to happen between now and then. But it is fantastic, while we've got restrictions, that we can actually still be here together to have this sort of important networking and sharing of ideas. Pleased to acknowledge that we are meeting on Kaurna country. I'd like to thank and acknowledge our host, Professor Marie Wilson. Thank you very much for stepping in to do this role at reasonably short notice, I understand. So terrific. And lovely to acknowledge my fellow panellists, Raman, Head of Strategy and Innovation, Australian Gas Infrastructure Group, or AGIG. Katie Hulmes, who I understand is in the ether somewhere and going to join us from a screen. Katie Hulmes, General Manager, Transformation and Readiness, Oz Minerals, and Philipp Dautel, Precinct Director for the Tonsley Innovation Precinct. CEDA members and ladies and gentlemen. Hydrogen is fascinating, compelling, important, simple, complex, and it's not a dream. It's actually coming. It's real. The hydrogen opportunity is compelling for our planet, for our economy, and very importantly for our regional areas in South Australia as well. It allows us to address some of the areas where it's very difficult to put carbon emissions, such as in heavy vehicle transport, shipping, aviation, industrial processes, aside. There are some areas where it's very difficult to do it with the renewable energy that we've got at the moment. But the drive is really coming out of countries which are not blessed with our enormous land mass, sun and wind, large energy-intensive industrialised economies without access to these things are the ones that are really pushing our big opportunity here in South Australia and Australia more broadly. For them, hydrogen is part of firing their power grids, much of which is already currently driven by fuel from Australia, thinking particularly about natural gas from the North West Shelf. So these trading relationships are already in place, which is a fantastic head start. Hydrogen helps us overcome the challenges associated with the concept of electrifying as much energy consumption as possible. Challenges such as distance, the limits of the grid, and the convenience of using familiar existing transport systems like piping, trucking and shipping can also all be applied to hydrogen in a fairly smooth way. Just recently, the Japanese government signalled a strong shift in its energy mix timeline, with new plans to bring hydrogen into its power system and reduce the use of coal by 2030. That was their original plan. They're bringing that forward, and I'll come back to that in a minute. This decision came off the back of the intensity and scale of flooding in Japan and Germany recently, and extended heat waves blistering the Americas, Greece and Siberia. It's no longer a faraway future. It's fast becoming the here and the now. Consumer and investor choices are also reshaping boardrooms. Boardrooms are setting out plans in line with net zero and some of them actual zero emission targets. Companies are being valued on their green credentials, among other things. The London Metals Exchange, the world's centre for trading metals, has a new assurance policy for green commodities. This supports car makers' demands for low-carbon steel and supply chains wanting green copper for electronics. In South Australia, it means our copper starts being more valuable because our clean power creates extra value. So for South Australia, hydrogen plays to our strengths. We have a massive $20 billion large-scale renewable energy project pipeline in South Australia, and these could generate an estimated 9,400 new construction jobs in the next few to several years. We in South Australia, this is our government policy, we intend, it's not a target, we intend to reach 100% net renewable energy generation by 2030 and I actually expect that we will achieve that sooner than that. These are goals set since the election by the Marshall government and are strongly linked to the South Australia-New South Wales interconnector. Interconnection with New South Wales, which has different weather patterns to us and to Victoria, where we already have interconnection, will help us by having offsetting peaks and troughs both on the supply and the demand side. Electric vehicles will help, driven by our new fast charging network and other parts of our electric vehicle action plan. Small and large scale storage are important. Demand management, similarly, supply integration and much more will help us get there very soon. Getting the mix of all of these components right and getting them flexible will be key as well. And yes, natural gas will also have a role to play in our energy mix for years to come. But back to hydrogen. With an abundance of sun and wind, skilled workforce, good infrastructure and available land, South Australia is extremely well positioned. We are a leading mineral processor with smelters and processing facilities which contribute approximately $5 billion in sales per year. Instead of industrial decline, hydrogen and renewable energy more broadly offer re-industrialisation opportunities for South Australia and Australia. Low-cost, clean hydrogen can expand processing for critical minerals and create supply chains and much, much more. And we will only achieve these in partnership with industry, in the same way that we work in partnership with industry, rolling out our renewable energy policies. Hydrogen needs demand from long-term customers, so high-volume exports will likely develop faster than large domestic use will develop. The clearest sources of demand are our trading partners overseas. Determining as quickly as possible where the domestic consumption opportunities will be strongest is, though, still very important. Some consumption will remain with direct injection renewable energy. Some will seek hydrogen in different ways. There are also areas where it will come down to consumer choice, so it's great that AGIG will be offering a clean gas product by 2025. Just as using domestic gas versus electricity is a choice for most consumers, natural gas versus hydrogen versus a blend of both will also become a choice for consumers. Initially, focusing on the higher value uses and the areas where it's currently most difficult to cut emissions in other ways will be the most obvious places to start looking for hydrogen opportunities with regard to domestic consumption. It's been a busy 3 years for the Marshall government building the foundations of a hydrogen economy. In July 2019, South Australia was the first government to join the Green Ammonia Consortium, then comprising 60 companies, including many of the largest Japanese industrial houses. We secured the International Hydrogen Safety Conference. In September 2019, the Premier launched the SA Hydrogen Action Plan at that conference here in Adelaide. The plan sets out 20 key actions across 5 main areas. In those early days, we encouraged the Japanese not to have a 2030 aspiration for green hydrogen, but to see it as a 2025 reality based on what we can produce in SA. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm very pleased that they have moved that way. I'm glad that this flowed through to their new aspirations, and it shows not only their commitment, but it also shows their belief in what we can do here in South Australia. When we launched the Hydrogen Action Plan, we also committed $1.25 million to develop a hydrogen export modelling tool and a prospectus. Launched in October last year and operational, this tool allows people and companies to build a project to source clean hydrogen from South Australia, to build it digitally, essentially, to work out all of the different aspects that they need to give them belief in what they can do in real life. And this landmark project has attracted more than 100 hydrogen specialists looking at projects in South Australia from the United States, Canada, France, Netherlands, Japan, Singapore and Chile. So we're very serious about this. We're also working very closely, and in fact that tool covers the work that Santos and others are considering with regard to blue hydrogen and carbon capture and storage in the Cooper Basin, another very important opportunity for us. One of the greatest opportunities that we've got in South Australia is the over 2,000 hectares of land that's available at Port Penithan. Government-owned land. We've been out on it looking for expressions of interest on that land, and we've had interest from South Australia nationally and internationally. That is perhaps the single the single most important opportunity that we have, because all of these other types of things that I've been talking about come together as an opportunity right there. It's not the only one we have, but it's something that government can actually mobilise by putting that land into the hands of the right parts of private enterprise. So we're taking this opportunity extremely seriously. We're doing a lot of work at Tonsley, which no doubt Philipp will talk about. We're working with many companies with regard to green steel. I don't know, Katie will talk about that. And Kristin will talk about AGIG and the outstanding work that they're doing. But let me just finish by saying that as well as these opportunities which we're developing, hydrogen electrolysis, because it has the opportunity to turn on and turn off massive, massive amounts of electricity in very short timeframes, is going to be another massive contributor to us being able to stabilise our grid, to use that massive load management opportunity to stabilise our grid. And lastly, in South Australia this calendar year, we are already 60%, slightly above 60% renewable energy in our grid in South Australia. Excuse me. AEMO independently forecasts that by 2025, we will be at 78%. So in South Australia, any producer who wants to add value to what they make and just take electricity out of the grid, in 4 years' time, will be able to say that they're taking 78% renewable energy into their production. That's a massive opportunity, and all of the things that we're here to discuss today will only grow that further and further and further, so that producers can add an enormous amount of value to what they make in South Australia through the fact that it will be produced in responsible ways that the rest of the world values very, very highly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. What a great way to kick off. Thanks for really giving us that overview. And I'd like to call our next speaker up, Kristin Raman, who's the Head of Strategy and Innovation for Australian Gas Infrastructure Group, or AGIG. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Fantastic. And I'm just finding my clicker. All right, so far so good. All right, thank you and good afternoon everyone, and I'd really like to start by echoing what the Minister said, and that it's fantastic to be here face to face with all of you today, and well done to the event organisers for making it all possible. I have to admit, the last few functions that I've done, everyone's been hidden behind masks or at the other end of a screen, so I haven't quite been able to see the reactions of people, so it'll be a bit of a different experience today, but this is a good news story, just as Dan said, so we should have a good reaction, hopefully. To start with a little bit about us. So we are Australian Gas Infrastructure Group. We are one of Australia's largest gas infrastructure businesses, and we have assets across the country and across the value chain. From large-scale gas storage to Bridgie is one of Australia's largest gas storage facilities in Western Australia, to large-scale gas transmission pipelines such as the Dampier to Bunbury natural gas pipeline, to being Australia's largest gas distribution business. We serve over 2 million customers across South Australia, Victoria, Queensland and in regional New South Wales. But what we actually do is we deliver energy for our customers, and we do it safely, we do it reliably, and we make sure we check in with them to make sure that what we are delivering them is in line with their expectations. And they really value the safety, of course, the reliability, and price is of course key, but more and more what they're telling us is that we need to be delivering them a sustainable energy future. And this is actually in line with also what we hear from our stakeholders, from our employees, and importantly also in line with our vision and our values. And our vision is to be the leading gas infrastructure business. And to us that really means delivering for our customers, being a good employer and being sustainably cost efficient. So if you think about what I just spoke about in terms of what we're hearing from our customers, what we're hearing from our employees and delivering on that vision, a key part of achieving our goals is underpinned by our low carbon strategy. And our low carbon vision, which I'm putting in front of you there, and Dan spoke about earlier, or mentioned earlier, I'm doing it again. I always call him Dan because he says I'm allowed to, and then I get in trouble for not saying the Minister. the Minister mentioned earlier, I'm really proud of this. And the reason that I'm proud of it is this is something that has not been put on us from external pressures. This low carbon vision that we are transparently reporting on, that we are committed to, that I'm speaking to you about publicly today, is not because there is a policy position that is forcing us to do it. It's because we've been listening to our customers. We've been listening to our employees who are really passionate about delivering a renewable future. We've been listening to our stakeholders, and we know that we've got a role to play. Just as we have previously, we've got a role to play in a low carbon future. And what we're committed to is delivering 10% renewable gas across our networks by 2030, and by 2040, as a stretch target, 100% renewable gas. And as I said before, by 2025, 100% renewable gas subdivisions available as a product. So these are pretty lofty ambitions, if I do say so myself, and it certainly keeps me out of trouble. But they are achievable, and the good news is we are already actually starting to achieve this. And how we're going to achieve this is by continuing to deliver our projects and also by working to enable the market more, so key market facilitators such as policy, regulatory and social constraints. So we've got a lot of projects on the go. We're turning it from our typical navy blue to a green, and I'll talk to you about a few of these in more detail. The most obvious place for us to start is Hydrogen Park, South Australia, and this is an Australian first project. It's real. That is not a really nice artist impression. That is the real facility down, of course, at the Tonsley Innovation District. Phil, you can talk more about why that's such a great place, and it is to put one of these facilities later. So this is an Australian first, Australia's largest electrolyser, and it's of global significance. We've had a lot of interest, even in these COVID times, of people wanting to come and tour this facility. And what it does is it produces a renewable hydrogen, and it blends it at volumes of up to 5% to more than 700 homes in Mitchell Park. And it also, through our industry partners, BOC, delivers 100% renewable gas to industry, like in Whyalla. So that was launched in May this year. We're not stopping there though. We've already got the next project under development. This one's called Hydrogen Park Gladstone. So this one will deliver up to a 10% renewable gas blend to the entire network of Gladstone in Queensland, so business and residential customers. And that will come online next year. And so you can see there, each time we do something, it's the step forward as we target our vision of 10% renewable gas. Hypersay did 5%, we're now moving to 10%. And then on to the next ones. So these ones were awarded funding by ARENA, Australian Renewable Energy Agency, earlier this year as well. And these are 10 megawatt projects, 2 of them. So 8 times the size of what we've got at Hypersay, which is currently the largest. For instance, Murray Valley, that's up to 10% to 40,000 connections online in 2023. So you can see there that we're well on the way to delivering on our vision. And that's important for multiple reasons. So with our vision, we are targeting, as I said, 10% renewable gas by 2030. And whilst 10% volume, you might think, why are you starting there? 10% is a lot of gas. Gas is an excellent carrier of energy. That's what gas is. It's easy to be stored. And to decarbonise that much gas will take a significant amount of electrolysis. So by decarbonising gas in this sector, we're actually building a lot of scale and a lot of capabilities, which brings me to my next point, which is about why it hasn't happened earlier: cost. So at the moment, we haven't, historically, I'd say, haven't been focused on renewable hydrogen. There hasn't been a market for it, but now that's changing. We know there's a market for it, and we know there's a need for it. We're already seeing the cost reductions as we move through the projects I've just spoken to you about. If I was delivering Hypersay today, and I must say that was enabled by a grant from the SA government, but if we were delivering it today, it would be delivered at a much lower cost. So we're already seeing cost reductions. But by targeting 10% renewable gas across our networks by 2030, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of megawatts of electrolysers. And that scale and that capacity will drive down the capital costs. We're also delivering innovations about how we can work with electricity providers on delivering a renewable electricity PPA that really, again, drives down those costs. So we're really confident, and our modelling indicates that with our vision we can get to H2 under 2, which is that target number and that headline number that sounds so good that we're targeting. Oh, that is not presenting properly. Just realised my arrow's a bit, but if you get sent the PDF after this, it'll be a much nicer finish of those slides. I apologise. But what the chart says actually remains the same. So we're targeting H2 under 2, and we can certainly get there with this. And that's important because after 2030, what we want to do is 100% conversion of our networks. So we need prices to be at parity with natural gas, and this strategy really gets us there. So we've touched on what we're going to do. I'd just like to move now to why. So why would we start with gas networks? And that's a question I get asked a lot. My general answer to that is, why wouldn't you focus on the gas networks to start this journey? Why wouldn't you focus on delivering the domestic sector with lowest cost decarbonisation? And that's really what we're doing here. I mean, we speak to our customers every day, and they say they like gas, they like the flame, and they understand the need to decarbonise, but they don't want to pay $1 more for it than they have to. And the modelling indicates that decarbonisation using hydrogen in place of natural gas in the home can deliver the carbon reductions at up to half the cost of electrification. And the reason that this occurs is, as I said before, the inherent storage capabilities and energy carrying capabilities of gas, and the ability that we can use our existing gas networks to deliver this product. Customers don't need to worry about new poles and wires being built or batteries, because we can deliver this hydrogen product using our existing gas network, and that's where you get the cost savings. Now, having said that, this isn't about gas versus electricity. We need more renewable electricity. We need more batteries. We need it all, because decarbonisation, as you can see in that chart, is a really big challenge. You have to decarbonise gas, electricity, transport. You have to move from a system that's got multiple sources of energy, and you have to decarbonise it all. So we need more of it, and we also need to use it more efficiently and effectively. At the moment, we've got solar PV in the middle of the day, which is causing issues. We've got wind farms being curtailed at night. We've got other generation that cannot be developed because the infrastructure that exists there cannot handle it. And hydrogen gives us the capability to develop more of it and to use it more effectively and to deliver it to customers. And the gas networks are a ready-made market that offers scale, and with that scale you can decarbonise these other hard-to-use industries before. So I already spoke about how with our Hydrogen Park South Australia, that was built off the back of gas distribution. However, we are now supplying it to industry. Without the distribution network there, the industry would not have come off the back of it. Similarly, we've got a refuelling proposal to go alongside our Gladstone facility, and we've got enough capacity at our Murray Valley project to supply other projects. The market being there and available enables us to build those skills and capacity and learnings and break down the barriers to entry that allow decarbonisation of those other industrials and refuelling stations and transport to occur. So I thought, again, I mentioned I was pretty proud of this one, so we'll finish on this slide again. The gas in our networks is changing, and it's changing for good, and we've got a clear targets of what we're going to achieve and when we're going to achieve it by. We're doing a lot of work around the edges with projects and really driving this change, but there are other facilitators, just like's happened in renewable electricity, that will really help this journey. One of those things is things like renewable gas certification, so that customers can actually buy the green product, and they want to buy it. If you talk to them, people actually want a green gas molecule. It can also help with the Green Star rating system to get it recognised, and we know this work is underway. The other things that can help are supportive policy, because it gives investors the foresight and the confidence to make these decisions. And it doesn't always have to be this stereotypical policy. Things that can help are things like making sure appliances are hydrogen ready, and certainly that's what's happening in the UK at the moment. The other things can be renewable gas targets, again, similar to electricity, to give the confidence. And we know that places like New South Wales and WA have 10% renewable gas in networks targets that are being discussed right now. So all these things can help us to really break down the barriers and drive towards this target, all to benefit customers and enable us to grow the skills and the capabilities and break down the barriers to entry that allow us to access the export opportunities that the Minister was talking about. So it's pretty exciting. We're making some pretty big changes, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully, maybe not me speaking here, but being here to talk to you in another year or two about how far along we've gone. We'll have some 100% renewable gas subdivisions by then, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Another great insight into the transformative potential of this fuel. Now, it's a lovely day and we're here maskless, but not everyone can be here, and we should be accustomed now that people will join us virtually as well as face-to-face. Our next speaker is Katie Holmes, the General Manager of Transformation and Readiness at Oz Minerals, and she should be beaming in right about now. There we go. Katie, welcome.
Hello, how are we doing?
Great. Love
Can
to
you
see
hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, Katie.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Well, firstly, I really want to thank everyone for having me today, and I do want to acknowledge that we meet on the land of the Kaurna people and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where our assets are all around the world. As you can see, I've taken this presentation virtually today. Oz Minerals is still asking its employees to attend events in an Oz Minerals capacity virtually as a part of our controls against COVID-19. So I do want to thank CEDA for enabling me to present today, and thank you all for your understanding. I do hope that the little dog you'll hear in the background doesn't disrupt this presentation too much today. Today I'm going to kick off our presentation with a discussion about the Oz Way. The Oz Way represents the ecosystem of Oz Minerals. I want to use this to frame the discussion, moving from our context on the left, where all industries around the world are dealing with changing trends in decarbonisation and stakeholder expectations. We have listened and acted on this through our choices. Our strategy has an aspiration to emit zero Scope 1 emissions and systemically reduce Scope 2 and 3 along our value chain. What you might notice about our strategy wheel in the centre there is it is focused on the how. One of the hows I'm going to talk a lot about today is innovation. A pro-innovation culture really means a collective and constant ambition to become better at what we are doing. The essence of innovation at Oz Minerals is doing something differently in order to create value for our stakeholders. I should point out they are our employees, community, suppliers, shareholders and governments. Everyone at Oz Minerals is empowered to innovate. My team work predominantly in the transformation zone, the longer horizon, more disruptive opportunities. To help achieve our longer horizon opportunities, we made a commitment in late 2020 to start an incubator and venture fund for internal and external access. It's now known as Think and Act Differently, or TAD for short. So what is Think and Act Differently? Well, emerging from the disruptions of 2020, we saw an opportunity for Oz to provide opportunities to uplift access to innovation and diversity of thought, and really foster deep collaboration to drive change. The incubator has 5 focus themes that have stemmed from our strategy: energy and emissions, clean products, data and technology, waste and water, and scalable and adaptable. Each of these themes take a unique lens over a challenge that the broader industry is facing, with the intent of finding a way to attract like-minded, innovative, and brave individuals and organisations from both within and outside of the mining sector. The incubator follows a simple 4-step process. Frame, so think about the question we're going to ask. Diverge, scan wide to bring people in. Converge, assess, evaluate and select. And accelerate, rapidly test assumptions and hypotheses. We work in a cohort model to keep lots of options on the table and test and learn our way through together to look at the long-term viability of technology and collectively uplift our capability. So, what are we here today for? Hydrogen. Let's talk about hydrogen. Hydrogen really does polarise technologists as to whether it's going to be the fuel or storage of the future or not. Further to that, we all know that it's expensive, and we've heard a lot today about the importance and the very promising projections to get that price down. I'm really excited to see the work coming out of South Australia. For this reason, we see hydrogen as a systems challenge, one that we wanted to understand more before we even took a position, and start to understand how the incubator could focus on this to support Oz Minerals. We're working on decarbonisation roadmaps, as are many of our peers, and it is hard to make financial and operational commitments to hydrogen, so we do hope that the work we've been doing in this challenge will help us make informed choices on the role hydrogen can play. So let's look a little bit more into the challenge of hydrogen. If I can work out how to look at that, fantastic. Juggling a few screens here. So, a little bit more. Think and Act Differently has worked very closely with Unearthed, and we realise that we don't know everybody and not everyone knows us. Further to that, when you step outside of the sector, there continues to be a lot to learn. Our Hydrogen Hypotheses Challenge was focused on supporting Oz Minerals achieve its decarbonisation aspiration by leveraging hydrogen to replace or reduce carbonised processes. We thought this was a pretty clear question that we wanted to take to the crowd. We had sought multiple perspectives, and we'd spoken to numerous hydrogen technology clusters about their roadmaps and actions. So the final clear statement was identify experiments that can demonstrate the safe and effective use of hydrogen in a mining context or at a mine site, providing Oz Minerals greater insight as to how hydrogen could be used. The very first and now seemingly obvious learning when we started this challenge several months ago was that to be able to provide an experiment for safe and effective use of hydrogen in a mining context, you actually needed to know what mining context was, what a mine site looked like, and what work is undertaken on a mine site. Following our first global webinar and rounds of discussions with innovators, many of whom did not come from our sector, we quickly learned that we needed to run a quick Mining 101 course and collectively lift the awareness of innovators about what we do in mining. This is continuing to become a really core product in what we offer in the incubator, and a core part of developing technology is helping people make sense of the other sectors they're working with. During the divergence stage, each innovator was asked to submit an experiment. We'd support them with materials, data, access to capability, access to technical mentors, basically anything they needed to support them to put in a purposeful submission. The benefit of crowdsourcing, particularly in this area for us, was the global network we found across startups, academics, large organisations and individuals that we would never have come into contact with. Through our work with Unearthed, we are continuously amazed at what's possible in this space and are always challenged in our own selves as to how much we have not diversified our networks for a long time. As you can see, over 10 weeks, we drew in 158 participants from 35 countries, taking forward 24 fully formed submissions and narrowing them down to 9 finalists. You might wonder what happens to all of those other people that have engaged. Well, we are working on a way to activate this TAD community and think about ways that we can find for them to connect to existing OEMs, consultants and universities to continue to innovate together. So digging a little bit deeper into technology. And I do want to acknowledge the SA-H2H Hydrogen Technology Cluster that we've recently joined for their supply chain concept image I'm using on this slide. Of our 24 submissions, they were from 15 different technology categories spread along the supply chain. It's worth noting that even the finalists we took through were still spread along the supply chain. And this highlights the importance for us in making transformational change to focus on teaming and deep collaboration rather than competing technology against each other. We don't want to see technologists comparing technology, but rather looking at the way their technology relates to a system and how they can engage together to create and realise opportunities. During the convergence stage, we create opportunities virtually for these teams to come together, and we encourage them to form their ideas as one and present for final funding as a single team. In the startup and entrepreneurial scene, this is quite common. And for many in the audience that run incubators or have been through them, I'm sure you're not surprised to hear me say that. However, for us, this was quite new. For our employees and stakeholders we regularly engage with, this is also new. We're very used to study stages, procurement and tender processes, lowest cost deliverables, and being on time and being right with little to no room for error. Learning how to work in this new and uncertain way takes a constant and relentless focus on learning and unlearning and reflecting on our own personal biases to make sure that the approach to technology, and uncertain technology at that, can work in harmony with these traditional processes. Prior to the final selection, we run presentation coaching. I do regularly see very technical concepts like the ones we're discussing today presented in a way that means that people either gloss over them or don't engage as they feel very overwhelmed. As engineers and scientists, we need to consider these complex technical opportunities and break them down to make them accessible for people. Our finalists were selected via an internal event, with over 100 Oz Minerals employees directly engaging with the innovators, learning about the technology, and asking open and transparent, unfiltered questions. I have realised through this that we have an enormous untapped opportunity amongst our own workforce, and it makes me wonder, as businesses, what processes do we have that may prohibit people from bringing them their whole selves to a business? When we get the innovators together, I'm always excited. There is a self-propagating buzz in the room. When I hear hydrogen use organisations sparring with electrolyser companies, storage companies sparring with engine designers, it fills me with hope that this technology is going to be realised. It is just a matter of bringing the right people together at the right time. So I haven't touched an enormous amount on where Oz Minerals is going with hydrogen because we're really at the start of our journey. And I'm actually proud today to announce for the first time publicly the 7 organisations that we'll be working with going forwards as a part of our hydrogen journey. For the Hydrogen Hypotheses Cohort, we will come together over the next 3 to 6 months to undertake experiments, studies and collaborations, sharing learnings with each other and our broader community. I do invite you, if you're interested in collaborating with us or any of these amazing organisations, please reach out to myself or a member of our team. And also encourage you to go onto the Oz Minerals website and register with Think and Act Differently so you can hear the progress of these activities as we carry them forwards. There is an enormous amount of opportunity here in South Australia, but also globally if we tap into these organisations around the world. I must admit, having watched the Olympics all week, it was quite nice to put this many flags on a page to come and talk today. We don't have all the answers. We're always learning about how to activate an ecosystem to support technology development. And without that active ecosystem, these transformations are really hard. So my final closing statement is, what I've learned about making it about people, making sure collaboration is key, and keeping it accessible. Thank you very much for having me today, and thank you again for having me virtually.
Thank you, Katie. Well, that's a third part of a very exciting lineup of speakers, from the Minister to Kristin and then Katie. It's my privilege now to be able to moderate some question and answers with our fabulous panelists. And it's great to see that the questions are rolling into Pigeonhole, and I've got lots to choose from. I'm going to put this first one to Philipp, because everyone's referred to you, Philipp, but you haven't had a chance to stand up yet. So I thought we've had 3 distinctly different perspectives, and anything that's going to happen in this space is going to require the public and private sectors coming together and developing the industry. Can you give us your views on both the investments and the commitments that make for a good industry, government, private sector portfolio and partnership?
All right. First of all, thank you for coming, and thanks for having me. Well, I can answer this question in 10 minutes or in 1 minute, so let's try to find somewhere in the middle. The thing is, when you look at these slides that just Kristin presented as well, it all looks so easy. There's now this thing sitting in Tonsley producing hydrogen. But I can remember the very first meeting, I think 3.5, almost 4 years ago, with Craig Delane here from General Manager from AGIG, proposing this idea of a hydrogen production facility using an electrolyzer. And to me, that sounded like, this sounds like Terminator. What is an electrolyzer? So which is the thing that splits water into hydrogen and oxygen? I said, yeah, we need one of those. That's exciting. But what we shouldn't forget, and this is where your answer comes from, these projects, you always need somebody who starts doing them. Because at the end of the day, or when we have it running, oh yeah, I knew it's going to work. But when you start engaging on these things, you don't know where the journey is going. It's never been done before in many ways. So you need that support of the government that not just financially supports it, which happened, but the people behind those projects as well. So it does require a investment and traction agency to bring investment into the site. It does need the transport and planning authority to look at these things. It does need the energy and mining department. It does need industry. So it is quite incredible how many people you need to pull something off that hasn't been done before. And I think that's quite a proud achievement on that. And that's basically what the Tonsley Innovation District is all about. So it's not a glorified industrial park. It is a place where we want to use the innovation word quite seriously, that sits within the Innovation District. And that is not just to attract innovative companies as such. That certainly we do, and we have key leaders in that precinct. But also, and also we want to innovate ourselves as a redevelopment project. So being the first 6-star, Green Star rated community, applying adaptive reuse at its best and winning most awards in that category. But thirdly, when you look at it, is we have a state government-owned mini-city, a test lab, a living lab, where people work, live and play. Open roads, pedestrian areas. It's almost like a mini-city where you can test and trial all the things that impact our society in the future, whether it's in mobility, in energy, in manufacturing, in aging, in connectivity. And what that site actually does, it provides that real-life environment to test and try things that haven't been done before. And whether that was with autonomous mobility, which we were, I think, the only in the world that had 4 autonomous vehicle trials on one given site. The hydrogen is another example. We have the Factory of the Future manufacturing. So these are the things where we almost want to give a picture of the future and trialing it now, and also work on the social licensing of these things. Autonomous mobility may be scary for some, so let's bring them down and let people experience it.
Great.
Hydrogen might be something that sounds scary to some, so let's have a hydrogen barbecue, and it was a real success. So this is the platform that you need, that otherwise you need to initiate and kickstart these initiatives.
Thanks. So that shows that in action in terms of that collaboration and partnership. The next question's for the Minister. Other states have introduced hydrogen charging stations and launched hydrogen vehicle trials. What's the South Australian government thinking about in this space in terms of using hydrogen for the transport industry?
Yes, and it's a terrific opportunity. There's some things happening as we speak, which I would love to be able to share very soon. In fact, intend to share very, very soon. It's been a challenge, though, and full credit to the previous government. Actually had money on the table for hydrogen buses, for example. Actually couldn't get a proponent that they were comfortable with to do this. And we've struggled with that challenge as well. One of the great opportunities seems to be in reconfiguring existing rail locomotives, taking them away from diesel and putting them onto hydrogen. So if you think about trying to ask somebody, would you just build a hydrogen locomotive? Well, that's a big job. Versus, would you take this one that exists right now, everything about it is real, we just want you to change the way it's powered and driven, is a much easier thing to bite off in one piece. So we're looking at that. We have an announcement to make about other heavy vehicle opportunities fairly soon. It is really important. One of the things that we're finding is that all states in Australia, as they should be, are working really hard on these opportunities, but we've all got our niches. We've all got our areas that we have head starts and areas where other states have head starts too. And I actually think that's a good thing. That's good for the nation, because then we'll get all of these things up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Chrissy, question for you from the audience. It'd be very cool, someone says, to enlighten domestic gas to electricity fanatics about the problem. How can we convert people who currently think that that gas is not a green or renewable energy source to see it as part of their future?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I've got two parts to my answer to that. And one of them is the assumption that everyone in their home would be just as happy with electric appliances as they would with gas appliances, and that's not true. The customers, we speak to our customers all the time. We're already a fuel of choice. Already customers have the choice. They can have electric or gas appliances in their home, and a lot of customers choose gas. Connections to the gas network continue to grow. It's reliable, people like using it, and some industry need the flame. So it's a really important fuel source. It's often just not at the top of people's minds because it's underground, it's very reliable, it's not always in their face. And it has had a carbon advantage over grid electricity historically, but as I said, that's not enough, and we're very clearly working towards a renewable gas future, and indeed already starting to deliver it. So when you speak to customers, it's not always front of their mind, but rightly so, renewable gas is also not at the front of their mind. And we've actually started now a campaign just to start to even more socialise and normalise that. And we've already done that with the community down at Mitchell Park, who are already receiving the gas, and they're very excited and proud to be receiving that. But you'll probably start to see, if you haven't already, I've already seen it, some adverts playing about changing gas for good and things like that. So we are starting to socialise it more broadly, which again we think is one of these barriers to entry, just about having these conversations with customers and letting them know that there is a future in gas, and it's a renewable gas product. So watch this space, a bit like Dan, but you should watch the space on your TV, maybe to be quite specific, to start seeing some of those ads coming through.
All right, thank you very much. The highly rated question here for the Minister. Do you see it as the government's leadership role to implement targets for the blending of renewable hydrogen with existing gas network?
There's a lot in targets, right? You set a standard. People, especially if it's regulated, legislated, people can or must achieve it. It's not my way, though, to be perfectly blunt. It's not what attracts me. We're moving this way anyway. And if the government were, this is my opinion, if the government were to set specific targets on specific things, we would probably achieve those things. But to think that the government would know best today exactly what we should be doing in 5 or 10 years' time, whenever those targets would come into effect, I think that would be naive. We work in very, very close partnership with industry, suppliers and consumers. And so, yeah, look, there are times where a target is right. There are times where you need to change a law. But I think we're actually moving down this way very, very quickly at the moment. If somebody were to say you must have an electric car or a hydrogen car, or you must have electric trains or hydrogen trains, I don't think that'd be the right thing to do. Let's all agree that we're moving down that path. We're getting there as quickly as we can. And as we gain momentum, competition kicks in, I think, better than legislation and regulation does anyway. Because when people can see this is where we're going, then they start actually trying to beat each other to where they need to be. But my main point is, we are deeply, deeply involved in policy development, financial support, and a wide range of things. But to think that we could set a target today that would be exactly where we should be down the track, I don't think that would be right.
All right, thank you. This is a question for Katie that kind of plays off of that a little bit. In terms of Oz Minerals' interest in hydrogen and the process that you're going through to generate leading ideas, is the rationale for you to achieve targets for the organisation? Are you looking for leadership or first mover advantage in the sector?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's so much in that. I don't think Oz Minerals is looking to be a first mover. I think our aspiration right now is to understand hydrogen and then be able to make an informed choice about where it fits and how we can build it into our decarbonisation plans. At the moment, quite a number of the OEMs that we work with and the manufacturing lines in front of them are looking at battery electric, and there's a lot of discussion, and there continues and remains an enormous amount of work for the sector to do to decarbonise following a battery electric path, but hydrogen is a part of the story. And what we want to do is understand that and then decide how we move forwards from there.
Thank you. Does the Minister see supply chain opportunities for South Australian companies to mitigate the risk of access to other technologies?
Yes, absolutely. We have world leaders right here in South Australia with regard to developing technology. We have traditionally been in a difficult spot with regard to manufacturing. Anytime you're trying to manufacture something, you need to get to economies of scale. If our domestic market doesn't offer economies of scale, then you need to export. Typically, the things that we've made have been heavy, so expensive. A lot of them have actually been quite delicate and precious, like cars. You can't just stack them on top of each other. You have to take care of them quite preciously along the way. They're the historical challenges that we've had. We have massive, massive opportunities now, huge opportunities. And including with supply chain, people in the room, I'm sure, would know that the supply chain aspect of mining contributes far more to our economy than actually the production does, and the production is enormous. It will be, or it already is, the same with regard to renewable energy, the renewable energy that we're familiar with already. It will come with hydrogen. And as I touched on before, the fact that we already know how to move gas in pipelines, ships, trucks, etc., it's immediately transferable to hydrogen. The fact that we will have an opportunity to have massive, massive export to partners that we already engage with in trade is outstanding. Our future export partners in hydrogen are deeply involved in our hydrogen production technology and development in South Australia, because they want us to get there as quickly as they can so that they can get our hydrogen. So supply chain is all the way through this stuff.
Thank you. Now, this will be a question for all of you, but I'm going to start with Katie. Are we expecting that private enterprise will fund and enter into the hydrogen game at large scale? Or would we be expecting other investments, including the state government, as has happened for other industries historically? And I'm going to start with you, Katie, in Oz Minerals, and then move to the other panelists.
Look, the way that I would respond to that from my perspective would be that it's not about one person funding anything, but everybody taking ownership for a part and looking at how we can bring this together. This is not a single, simple solution, but we need to have complementary expenditure on capital investment and future decisions to unlock this. So I certainly think it's a complex area of how does this come to be, but I don't think it's about one person.
Thank you. Philipp.
Yeah, I think you need both. I think you need private and government. And if you look at, now everybody has solar panels on their roofs. Why is that? Because we started with having a high feed-in tariff, and that sort of incentivized and encouraged people to, on the uptake of solar PV. So suddenly you're producing your own energy and feeding it into the grid. So now I think the same will be for the hydrogen journey, as far as I'm concerned, because it can't be done by just one. If we want to achieve as much as we're not talking about targets as such today, but if we want to be as ambitious as we are in Australia, we need the government's involvement in that. I certainly believe that. But on the other side, what you mentioned, Minister, earlier with the steel for cars is a good one, and I'm certainly passionate about cars. So the end customer, the consumer of the goods that we make or that we buy globally are the ones who actually will drive and dictate that. So when I'm watching a Woolworth ad today, or Coles or Aldi, they all now not telling how cheap their whatever Coca-Cola is, they're now telling them how much they trying to achieve this renewable energy target.
No product placements, Philipp.
Say it again?
No product placements.
Yeah. But equally, if you want to supply an Audi or a BMW with steel, they will mandate to have it green steel, and that's why we come in to produce that. So it's that combination.
Great, thank you very much. Chrissy.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think it needs to be both, and I think you can take learnings from the electricity sector. I mean, that's been supported, the renewable electricity sector supported for many years, and look at how far and the great things we've achieved there, and that's through public and private coming together. Renewable gas is in a similar place to where they were all those years ago, and we're making a lot of movement, and we've come really far in the past 5 years, but we've got a long way to go, and so mechanisms that helped get that sector where it is today can play an important role in the gas sector as well, I think.
Thank you.
Look, similarly, government's job is to help things which are not quite there commercially attractive for private enterprise yet, but it's been identified that there's good social, community, economic value to get past that hump. Philipp used the example of solar panels, and Kristin said the same. Look, right now we are subsidising household batteries because they don't quite justify for the household yet themselves, but they will. An example of that is we started off with our subsidy at a maximum of $6,000 per battery. It's soon going to go down from $3,000 to $2,000 per battery. That $4,000 drop in the subsidy across the same time, the cost of the batteries that are being bought has dropped $4,700. So pretty soon, we just get out of the way, leave that alone. Hydrogen is exactly the same. It is worth committing taxpayers' money, remember it's not the government's money, committing taxpayers' money to projects to get industry, to get opportunities moving, whether they be environmental, community, economic, whatever it is, to just get over the hump, let industry then co-invest, and then once you're over the hump, let industry get moving, and then you move on to the next thing. From wind farms, you don't have to subsidise a wind farm anymore, you don't have to subsidise a solar farm anymore, very soon you won't have to subsidise a household battery, and I reckon in 10 years' time it won't take any government taxpayer subsidy for hydrogen either, but there'll be something else that's down the track that will be really good, and government should be focusing on that.
Thank you very much. Now, some of our participants have asked, the shipping cost to markets appears to be a challenge for export from South Australia. What do we consider to be our comparative advantage in this emerging industry as a state?
Okay. Our comparative advantage is that while all over the world and in Australia people are producing brown hydrogen, blue hydrogen and green hydrogen, at the end of it, we're all going to end up with green hydrogen down the track. Our comparative advantage is that we've got space, we've got sun, we've got wind, we've got relatively low-priced land next to existing or future export terminals. We have the opportunity, I mentioned earlier about the very fortunate fact that when you're running electrolyzers, you can turn them on and off very quickly without doing any damage to your equipment. So when you can manage that sort of thing, right now, it's not uncommon at all to have negative wholesale prices for electricity. Wouldn't you love to be getting paid to take electricity to make your hydrogen? These are all fantastic comparative advantages that we've got. At other times, you know, electricity is very, very high priced. Wouldn't it be great? Just turn off. Just turn off. As soon as you've turned off, you've reduced demand. As soon as you've reduced demand on the grid, you've started to pull the price down. You've helped everybody else in the process. It's actually endless where this can go, but we have massive comparative advantage compared to other states and other nations in producing green hydrogen.
Great, thank you very much. A question for Kristin. The current gas infrastructure is safe for the 10% gas blend that you're talking about. What modifications, if any, will be needed to the existing gas infrastructure to safely carry a product that is more hydrogen than natural gas, up to the 100% aspiration that you mentioned?
Gas infrastructure is a very broad term, but I think generally what we're talking about when we're talking about delivering blended gas and 100% renewable gas to customers is our gas distribution networks. Now, coincidentally, we've been replacing our older pipelines with next generation polyethylene over the past 10, if not more years, as part of our mains replacement program that we undertake for safety reasons. Now, we might say that we were visionary, but others might say that we were lucky that also are capable of taking 100% hydrogen. So the distribution networks that are in the ground today or about to be in the ground in the next 5 years as we finish our mains replacement programs are suitable to take 100% hydrogen. And so the 10% limit that we really are talking about here is based around appliances that are in the homes. Now, our appliances are made to run really safely and effectively and efficiently on natural gas because that is what is known at the moment. But we can also have 100% hydrogen appliances. We've got the barbecue that we like to run out. We're going to have some cooktops and heaters that we bring into the state later this year just to demonstrate it. But they exist. This is not a technical challenge. This is more just a market challenge. Why would you sell hydrogen appliances at a time when there is no mandate or other thing that you're going to have renewable gas? But the way to get around that and what they're doing in the UK is what we call hydrogen-ready appliances. So these are appliances that are made to run on 100% hydrogen, but you have a burner in there that can take blends, just like the burner we've got today, and then in less than an hour, someone can come in and take that burner out when we switch to 100% hydrogen. So it's just a way of rolling this out, and that's what we did when we converted from Towns gas, which was already 50 to 60% hydrogen that we used to rely on in the 60s and 70s, to natural gas, and it's just a process that we'd have to undertake. And on that, I will also point out that no matter which pathway you take, there is an appliance changeover. So either you change over to electric appliance, which is actually going to be probably a bigger task because they're not like for like and you'd have to decommission the gas assets in your home, or we start to sell these hydrogen-ready appliances, and then it's a very quick changeover process in the 2030 plus timeline when that time comes. So our networks, the lower pressure networks in the States, they're the new generation polyethylene and suitable for 100% hydrogen.
All right, thank you. For the last comment from the audience, we have a proposal for Chrissy and the Minister for an H2 pipeline to Darwin. Thumbs up, thumbs down?
We'll build it.
AGIG and others, as you said, no product placement. Look, someone would have to invest in it, right? So let's say that we would be the hydrogen producer. If there was a hydrogen market and people wanted to get that hydrogen in the Northern Territory, then let's get these people together and start to talk about it. Nobody's managed to do that with water over several decades, going the other direction. But look, at the end of the day, it's not impossible. It could happen.
Thank you. We might add a two-way deal into the question next time. Thank you very much. You've been very engaging. Katie, Kristin, Philipp, Minister. It's been lovely to have you up here, and I'm sure that everyone has been engaged and really enjoyed your presentations and your participation today. And I'd like to hear from all of you about how wonderful it's been.
Thank you.
Thank you.